All right, welcome into the first episode of the Buddy Dill Show. I'm your host, Buddy Dill, and I will be here every day. We will be just covering whatever happened the day before in sports, in this case on Mondays especially. Going to cover what the weekend before. A lot of stuff happened this past weekend, especially in college football. The NFL is pretty busy too. I'm going to take you to the first thing we're going to talk about is going to be the game of the weekend, in my opinion, and possibly the game of the year so far in college football. It is maybe a little biased because of who it is, but it was a great game. Ole Miss and LSU played in Oxford on Saturday and had a barn burner. Ole Miss jumped out to a quick 14-0 lead. LSU answered, so did Ole Miss, and then after that, I don't think anybody didn't score until almost the end of the game. The yards and points were everywhere and plenty for everybody. Jackson Dart for Ole Miss had 389 yards. He had 4 touchdowns. He had 50 yards rushing and another rushing touchdown. He lit it up. Quinshawn Judkins, who Ole Miss has been looking to get the running game going, and they finally were able to. Judkins carried the ball 33 times for 177 yards and another touchdown. He also had one catch for a touchdown. It was a game. It was a really entertaining game. Jaden Daniels really looked really, really good. I've had my doubts about him this year, but after watching him, and I was there at the game watching him in person, he's the real deal. He was able to put up yards whenever he wanted to. He threw for 414 yards and 4 touchdowns. He also ran for 99 more yards and another touchdown. This was a great matchup between two really high-powered offenses. The defenses didn't really show up very much. Ole Miss was able to get just enough towards the end. After falling down 9 points, they were able to go and score and then get another stop to get the ball back. Then were able to score again with about 30 seconds left. LSU had a shot at the very end of the game. They had 2 throws in the end zone, and both of them were just off the hands of LSU receivers. Unfortunately for them, time expired and the game was over. Ole Miss ended up with 706 yards of offense, which is insane to think of in an SEC game. 389 passing, 317 rushing. There were 65 first downs combined between the two. Ole Miss had 32, LSU had 33. LSU had 637 yards of offense. There were over 1,300 yards of offense in this game. Ole Miss, where one spot they struggled, especially last week against Alabama, was on third downs. Last week they were 1 of 11 on third downs. This week they were 9 of 16, which is going to really help to be able to prolong drives and be able to give them more opportunities to score, which they obviously did. But I thought this was the game of the year. Ole Miss's offense is legit, especially if they can get the running game going, especially like they did this week. LSU has just suffered their second loss of the year. That probably knocks them out of playoff contention. There was a lot of high hopes going into the year for LSU, thinking they had a good chance to make a playoff run. I don't think it's going to happen this year. They still have a chance to win the SEC just because of the way that the games have fallen. And if they do that, then they may be able to slip in there with as a 2-loss team. But they have to win. They can't afford to lose another game. And they also still have to play Alabama. They still have to play Auburn. They still have to play Florida. They still, if they want to make a SEC championship game, they have to play Georgia. Ole Miss is in the same boat, though. They can't afford to lose another game. After a pretty rough loss to Alabama last week. And now they can't lose. So they were the number 1 hardest ranked schedule in the in the entire country, actually, coming into this year. So they have a long ways to go too. Let's go out west now. USC and Colorado. Colorado got throbbed last week against Oregon. The score doesn't. The game ended up being a lot closer than a lot of people thought it was going to be. USC jumped out to a 34-10 lead and thought that this game was over. Colorado fought back. You got to give them a lot of credit right there. Shedeur Sanders played solid, especially in the second half. He threw for 371, 4 touchdowns, but he did have an interception. Marion Miller for Colorado had 196 receiving yards, which is a Colorado freshman record. He had a great game. But it all comes back to Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams is the real deal. He's looking to become the first back-to-back Heisman winner since Archie Griffin did it. And he's doing everything that you can ask him to do. He threw for 403 yards and threw for 6 touchdowns. He did have one bad interception, but other than that, it was a pretty incredible day. USC was able to come out with a 48-41 win. And, but Caleb Williams is just almost impresses you more every single week. Just when you think that he may be sliding off, he didn't have the greatest game last week, and then he comes back with this kind of game. He's unreal. The only way I think that now that he doesn't win the Heisman is just the voters don't want there to be a back-to-back. That's because I think he's the best player in the country. It's that simple. He's unreal. He can do anything. He can make any kind of throw on platform, off platform, across the field, across his body. It doesn't matter. He can make any throw. He's probably better than half the quarterbacks in the NFL right now. They're going to be tanking pretty soon just to try to get him for their team next year in the NFL. Number 1, Georgia had a scare. Down early. Weren't able to really climb back until late. Not only that, even though they were able to climb back late, Auburn had a chance at the end. Brock Bowers was the player of the game for Georgia. It's not that surprising. He does that every week. But he had 157 yards receiving and a game-winning touchdown that put them up 27-20. Auburn, like I said, had an opportunity to drive down the field and win the game. Unfortunately, they threw an interception at the very end, and that kind of ended the game for them. They only had 88 yards passing. You can't win in the SEC with only 88 yards passing. You would think that Hugh Freeze would have figured it out and had their offense clicking, but their quarterback situation is pretty rough. There's only so much you can do with that group right now. I think it's going to take him a little bit more time to get back into relevancy in the SEC. Notre Dame, coming off of the loss to Ohio State, needed to answer back, and it was a tough one in Durham. First time ever game day was at Duke. It was a pretty sloppy game. Sam Hartman played solidly. But Audric Estime, he had the game-winning 30-yard touchdown run with about 30 seconds left. And then right at the end of the game, it was a pretty unfortunate play. Riley Leonard fumbled the ball, and that ended the game. But worse than that, Riley Leonard fell very awkwardly, left the field, had to be carted off the field, and walked off the field on crutches. It didn't look good. It looked like it was his knee. Hopefully there's nothing too bad there, because you hate to see that. I mean, he's had a great year so far, especially with that first win against Clemson, but you just hate to see anybody get hurt like that, especially towards the end of the game. Let's go to the NFL. Last Thursday night, the Lions have won another game against the Packers. They put the Packers out of the playoffs last year. They come back this year and beat Jordan Love. David Montgomery was the player of the game there. He had 32 carries for 121 yards, and he had 3 touchdowns. I mean, a lot of people thought that Jahmyr Gibbs was going to get a bulk of the carries for the Lions, but David Montgomery has just come in and just taken over that running back room. He's done really well all year long, and I don't really see any slacking off. I mean, Jahmyr Gibbs is a really talented player, but I think he's just going to have to wait now. The Lions held Green Bay to 27 rushing yards. That was a pretty dominant performance on defense for Dan Campbell's group. You don't see that very often in the NFL. Speaking of defense, there was none in this game, just kind of like it's been all year for the Dolphins. But the Bills were able to go in and really just stop the Dolphins' offense, which hasn't been done yet this year. There's a lot of high hopes for the Dolphins coming into this game, thinking they had a great opportunity to take a lead in the division, extended lead. And the Bills said, no, we're not doing that. Josh Allen had his best game of the year. He threw for 320 yards and 4 touchdowns. He also ran for another one. Stephon Diggs, he had 120 yards receiving and 3 touchdowns of his own. Tua didn't play bad. It started out the game. It was through the first quarter, I think there were 2 incompletions in the game total between the 2 quarterbacks. But Tua struggled a little bit later on. He had 280 yards passing, threw a touchdown. He did have an interception, and he did also lose a fumble. But Josh Allen was the man yesterday. He since that first Monday night game against the Jets, he's really turned his whole game around. And against the Jets, he was taking a lot of deep shots, a lot of ill-advised deep shots, just throwing into double coverage, throwing into triple coverage. And it wasn't really working. But since then, he's really kind of backed up a little bit. He's throwing the quicker routes. He's throwing the easier ones. He's throwing them on target, and he's getting it to his receivers and letting them make plays. Like Stephon Diggs yesterday made a great play. He was a pretty simple throw and catch. And then Stephon Diggs did the rest of the legwork. He made 2 guys miss, made them broke a tackle, and was able to score a long touchdown. So I think that Josh Allen, as long as he keeps doing this, he's going to be hard. The Bills are really, really hard to beat, just like as we thought. I figured they would be, but after that first Jets game, you weren't really sure. So the Broncos and the Bears played. This is a battle of unwinning. Neither teams have won, so somebody's going to get their first win of the year. Justin Fields played really, really well. He threw for 335 yards, 4 touchdowns. He did have an interception, but they did exactly what they were trying to do, and they played really well. And then the second half happened. At one point in the third quarter, the Bears had a 98.1% chance to win per ESPN. And then somehow Russell Wilson returned to form for a little bit. He threw for 223 and 3 touchdowns. The Broncos were able to claw back into this game and finally win it late. And the Bears just can't figure it out. They can't win games, and it's pretty sad to watch this point. Because Justin Fields is very, very talented. But I think that he just has no chance in Chicago. So they're going to have a lot of issues. They might be on the Caleb Williams train here and may give up on Justin Fields already, which is crazy to think about coming into this season. The talk about Justin Fields was how great he was and how he was ready to make this jump, and how the Bears were going to be contenders this year. And I think that everybody spoke a little bit too soon. The Eagles and the Commanders played. It was actually a really entertaining game. Jalen Hurts played well. Sam Howell played well. Sam Howell's been really impressive so far. I wasn't really expecting a whole lot out of him coming out of college, but he's done really well. Threw for 290 and a touchdown, and had a clutch drive late. He was able to take his team down after just going down 7, and was able to score a touchdown as time expired. Zeros were on the clock. They had one last play with 1 second left and was able to find the end zone. So he played really solidly, but Jalen Hurts played really well too. He threw for 319 and 2 touchdowns. He was really has thrown the ball more the last 2 weeks. And there was some arguments between A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts a couple weeks ago. People were speculating that it was because A.J. Brown was not happy with the amount of targets that he's been getting. Well, I think he's happy now. Yesterday, he had 175 yards receiving on 9 catches, and he had 2 touchdowns. He lit it up. He burnt the Commanders' defense up, especially their DBs. And in particular, it was Emmanuel Forbes, who was a rookie this year. He had a great game. I think this is the A.J. Brown that we expected to see the first few weeks, but he really didn't get it going until last week. This is 2 straight games with over 150 yards receiving for him. He's going to be fine. Jalen Hurts is fine. The Eagles are a legit team. They're a Super Bowl contender. The other Super Bowl contender that played the other day, or played yesterday, was the Chiefs. And they played in New York with the Jets. The only thing that anybody seemed to care about was the fact that Taylor Swift was there. I think that I speak for a lot of sports fans when I think that the first week it was interesting and cool, whatever, but it's too much. We're tired of seeing Taylor Swift every 2 seconds in a football game. But during the actual game, Patrick Mahomes came out first quarter, looked really good. He threw a touchdown, and he became the fastest player in NFL history to throw for 200 passing touchdowns. And then the second half, he lost it. He had a couple of throws that just didn't make any sense to me. He threw 2 really, really bad interceptions, and that really allowed the Jets back in it. The Jets were down 17-0 early, fought all the way back, got it to 20-20. They tied the game up. Zach Wilson played really good coming out of the half and played a pretty solid game. I mean, he actually, in my opinion, he outplayed Patrick Mahomes. He just couldn't make the play whenever it mattered. He had a big fumble late, but he played solid. I think there's a lot of hope for Jets fans, just that maybe, okay, he can actually play. It's not necessarily that he's just incapable of doing it, but I think that maybe they can just start to possibly believe in him a little bit. Isaiah Pacheco played a great game. He had 158 total yards and a touchdown. It was pretty much a home game for him. Grew up in New Jersey, went to Rutgers, and then they played in, the New York Jets play in New Jersey. So that was a really close one for him. He played a great game. Really kept the Chiefs right there where they needed to be. So that was that was Sunday night. Monday night this week, there's only one game finally. I was getting tired of the 2 games in 1 week. Got the Seahawks at the Giants. Seahawks are favored by 1.5 here. I think this will be a pretty entertaining game. The Seahawks have played really well. The Giants have struggled. I think that 1.5 is a little lower than I expected. I figured the Seahawks would be favored a little bit more, but maybe it's because it's in New York. I think that the Seahawks will probably win this one by 3. I think they cover, and the Giants are going to fall to, I think, 0-4, 1-3. And they're just not. They're not that good. That's the main thing. Is the Giants aren't very good. The Seahawks have been playing really well, and I think that that's just going to carry over into this. So the MLB playoffs start tomorrow. The final game of the regular season was yesterday. I think that the wild card matchups, these are best of 3. Not only are they best of 3, the higher seed will host all 3 games. There's not going to be playing one game here, another game there, and coming back. The first week, this first few games, the AL wild card is going to be the 6th seeded Blue Jays at the 3rd seed Minnesota Twins. This is going to be an entertaining one. We're going to talk a little bit more about these matchups tomorrow before the games. But the main thing you need to know is that the winner of this wild card series will go on to play the Astros. The Rangers were not able to hold out and win the West. They gave it up to the Astros. So they fall all the way from the 2 seed all the way back to the 5 seed. So they're not even playing a home wild card game now, when they were hoping to have home field advantage for the divisional series. Now they will travel to Tampa Bay and play the 4 seed Rays, and the winner of this wild card series will play the Orioles. In the NL, the D-backs are playing at the Brewers. The winner of that will play the Dodgers, and then the Marlins will play the Phillies. This is an NL East matchup everywhere, all the way around. Both teams, the Marlins and the Phillies, are in the NL East. They will play the Braves, whoever wins that series. So that's all the NL East that made the playoffs out, not counting the Mets because they really suck this year. So that is the MLB playoffs. We're going to talk a little bit more about that tomorrow and get you ready for those games tomorrow night. In the golfing world, the Ryder Cup played at Marco Simone Golf Club in Rome, Italy. Europe defeated the United States 16.5 to 11.5. Europe jumped out to a quick lead on Friday morning, and then really just put the foot on the gas all the way up until Saturday afternoon. The U.S. showed a little bit of life. There was a little bit of controversies in the whole tournament between Hatgate, between Patrick Cantlay not wearing a hat, and then Joe LaCava and Rory McIlroy getting into it because Joey didn't get out of Rory's line. Thought maybe possibly that would be enough to get the United States back in it. And they actually had an opportunity, but Tommy Fleetwood won the final point for Europe to take back the Ryder Cup. This is the United States has been able to win on foreign soil. They have not won in Europe since 1993, so it's now been 20 plus years, and we'll have to wait for another 4 years to try to do it again. But that's about it. That's just going to cover it for the first episode of the Buddy Dill Show. Thank you for listening, and make sure to join us back here tomorrow. We're going to get you ready for the MLB playoffs that start tomorrow night. We're going to recap the game tonight, the Giants and the Seahawks, and anything else that pops up here in the next 24 hours. So thank y'all again for joining in and listening, and we will see y'all tomorrow.